Hello, friends. Welcome to Logistics of Logistics podcast. My name is Joe Lynch. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today's topic is RocketFuel, Fintech for fulfillment with my friend Braden DiCristofano. I almost screwed it up there. DiCristofano. How's it going, Braden?
Good. Very good.
So, Braden, please introduce yourself and your company and where you're calling from today.
Yep. My name is Braden DiCristofano. I'm the CEO and co-founder of two organizations. I guess you could say three. One being Launch Fulfillment. That's currently where I'm calling from. We have our warehouse here in Springville, Utah. I'm also the CEO and co-founder of RocketFuel Recharge and a sister company to Launch Fulfillment called Launchpath Logistics.
Very nice. Very nice. So I interviewed your partner, Josh, and so I got a little bit of this before, but tell us, what does RocketFuel do?
Yep. So I am the co-founder and CEO of three companies, actually, all born from each other and co-mingling. Our first company is Launch Fulfillment. From Launch Fulfillment, we founded RocketFuel Fintech for fulfillment. And then from that, we've also founded Launchpath Logistics, which is a logistics broker.
Very nice. So we'll go in order here. So the first company you have is Launch Fulfillment. What problem are you solving and who you solve it for?
Yeah, Launch Fulfillment is very much a true fulfillment center. Okay, so we handle business to business and business to consumer fulfillment on a pretty large scale. We have three locations. We have Utah, Kentucky, and then we also have a facility out in the United Kingdom. But we're very much a great one-stop shop on the logistics sphere for our customers, right? And I know that's a cliche term, but
we'll talk more about Launch Fulfillment in a second. So what is Launchpath?
Launchpath Logistics is kind of like that little fish that hangs on to the baby shark, or to the shark. So basically, we started Launchpath Logistics to service our customers only in launch fulfillment. So it's a full freight brokerage, import export, but only for launch fulfillment clients.
Very nice, very nice. And your last company, last but not least, is RocketFuel. What does RocketFuel do, and what problems is it solving, and who does it solve it for?
Yeah, so RocketFuel was born from launch fulfillment. It's the first fintech specifically built for the fulfillment industry, right? So this has always been a very blue collar industry, fulfillment. And we realized in the blue collarness of this industry that there's a lot of white collar problems on the financial side of things. And RocketFuel solves those problems. Anywhere from ensuring cash flow is solid to ensuring that your packages are being audited in a more automated format, to carrier disputes, to full billing, right? Pick, pack, ship, giving customers visibility, a litany of things.
Yep. I remember probably 10 years ago, I was touring a warehouse and somebody said, they're showing me some of the different things they're doing. And then the guy said, Joe, basically warehousing like we do it is you take things out of big boxes, you put them in little boxes, and you ship. And I said,
very simplified, yes.
And I said, okay, that's good. But the devil's in the details, because shipping is not easy. By the way, the speed of this thing is not easy, because if you get an order in by 2:00, it's got to ship that day. And and there's shipping with multiple different carriers, and there's auditing problems. We'll get into all the problems later, but it was very interesting to me to think of warehousing as the simple part of it is we take things out of big boxes, we put them in little boxes, and we ship them.
And put a whole lot of stuff in a building. That's it. Yep.
So Braden, tell us a little bit about you. Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? Some career highlights before you started all these companies.
Yeah, I grew up in Pleasant Grove, Utah. So, very much a fan of Utah and the beauty surrounding this area. Very much a fan of the business focus in Utah. And obviously with that, grew up in a traditional family in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and went on my mission to Jacksonville, Florida, which covered upper portion of Florida, all the way into Georgia, all the way into South Carolina. But if you really want to say what my school was, I'd say my school was my mission, right? Following my mission, I really only attended 6 months of college at LDS Business College. And that was just more, I would say I took one entrepreneurship class and that was it. That's
You
all I
said,
needed.
"That's it. That's all the education I
Yeah.
need from you
I
guys."
didn't care for the business law. I didn't care for the, the project management, even though I use all that, right? That entrepreneurship class that struck. So I did one semester at LDS Business College, and then I went from there to getting into sales, right? So I did the door to door thing for about 3 years. Did really well in the door to door sphere, but knew it was limited, right? Knew I was kind of hitting a ceiling. I could be a guy who goes out and knocks doors and builds a team. That's the career, and I didn't want that. I went from that into working in packaging. So I actually was a Utah division sales manager for a company called Traco Manufacturing, and that was selling boxes, tapes, labels, kind of your general packaging.
This was the education you needed.
Exactly. So I did that for little over 5 years, and a bulk of my clients were fulfillment centers and contract manufacturers, and I really got to see the back workings of that world. And I really started to learn finance. I started to learn, everything you learn when you step into the career field. And that led me and to kind of saying, hey, yeah, I really want to start a fulfillment center. I think there's massive opportunities in this, and ultimately brought my best friend and current still best friend, more like a brother, Josh, into the picture, and we ran. So
Very nice. Now, I interviewed your partner and buddy, Josh. I'll make sure I put a link to that in the show notes. I'll put your link to your LinkedIn profile and any other links you and your go-to-market team give me. Before we hit the record button, we're talking about the success of the LDS community when it comes to business. And I think when Mitt Romney was running for president a while back, I saw a special on TV, and they were talking about all these wildly successful people who grew up in that world, and a lot of them gave credit to the mission they went on. And you said the same thing. You go, it is not easy. So tell us how that mission you did influenced your.
yeah, it's 2 years of focusing on anybody but yourself, right? And it's 2 years of extreme structure. It's 2 years of separation from family. It's 2 years of leadership learning. Right? There's a leadership structure in the mission that allows missionaries to lead other missionaries. And by the end of my mission, I was given the opportunity to lead over 250 missionaries in our mission. Right? And all of those principles that I learned in the mission were so critical. I remember when I got back off my mission, I actually lost 10 pounds in my first week because of stress. Because on the mission, you're always running. You wake up at 5:30, 6 a.m., you work out, you get ready, you study for 2 hours, and then from studies, you're out knocking doors, following up with people, setting meetings. I mean,
And there's also a ton of rejection in that,
oh yeah,
and
tons of
obviously
rejection.
a lot of, if you can take rejection and you have discipline, you are ready to start a business.
Yeah, when I got back off my mission, I just thought, there is no way I'm going to sit in a classroom for hours on hours on hours when I was just
Everything
go go
else is
go after
easy after that.
Yeah, but not to say that's the wrong path. It just wasn't the path for me, and I'm grateful I didn't stick with it, to be honest. So
So let's switch gears and talk about the topic today, which is rocket fuel, fintech for fulfillment. So, what do you mean by fintech? I think we all know what that means, but fintech for fulfillment, what does rocket fuel do for your customers? What problem are you solving for them?
yeah, and when we talk fintech in the logistics sphere, there is financial technology, but there was not a lot of great financial technology, right? And we really felt that a lot of the financial technology missed the major problems. It was very good at reporting.
Y- Yeah, so you told me before that rocket fuel started to solve one problem. Let's talk about that one problem first. And you discovered it while working at launch fulfillment. So you guys had a problem. I think it was around Thanksgiving. Talk about that problem and how you guys went about solving it.
Yeah, so we had a situation on Black Friday where, over that weekend we were shipping out hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of USPS parcel. And for those who know USPS, excuse me, you also understand that that the minute you press ship on that label, you've bought that label, and the cash has
They got
left.
they got your credit card, right?
Yeah, the cash has left the fulfillment center's bank account. So you do that, over hundreds of thousands of dollars as a small startup 3PL. Well, suddenly on a Friday you may have had 400 grand in your bank, and on a Monday you have 50 grand in your bank, right? And you got payroll coming that next week, and that's exactly what happened. And Josh kind of gave the definition on that, but we kind of looked at this and said, this feels a little unfair. And it feels a little unfair because the brands have already been paid for the shipping, right? Most brands are either getting that shipping cost or they're amortizing it. So we decided,
Oh yeah, because they have my credit card. I bought the sweater. They got my money, so they're all set. and and it's your problem as it rolls downhill here. Rolls downhill, Braden.
yep, exactly. And we're in a unique position where, look, manufacturers, they give net terms because customers haven't sold the product yet. But in our scenario, you've already sold the product. You already have the money. There's no reason that we, as a 3PL, who's a very marginal business with high overhead, should have to also carry the cash flow of the brand, right? So we said, you know what? Let's give this a shot. USPS uses a meter system, okay, and a meter system is basically, we tell the meter, look, I want to keep a balance of $10,000. When I hit $1,000, go ahead and put 10,000 more into that little bank account that you're pulling from, right? That's how our cash would run out so quickly. We would just see all these transactions of $10,000. If we spend 100 grand, we get 10 transactions of 10 grand. So we said, let's just build that on the brand side. And so we did. We built a brand facing version where when we got transacted, the brand got transacted, right? And there was some initial worry that our brands were going to push back. But the beauty of it was when we had a conversation, they understood, right? And they also couldn't fight the fact that, yeah, we have been paid for shipping. Yeah, we have gotten our money already. It comes within, 3 days of Shopify cashing it out or whatever. So it makes sense. And additionally, this is one of the most partnership driven industries out there. Like, a fulfillment center is not like a manufacturer. The brand is going to talk to the fulfillment center every single day. It is their back warehouse. And so if your back warehouse fails, that's catastrophic for a brand.
Yeah, and or if they're struggling because they don't have, if you say, hey, we can't maintain our payroll, or we're robbing Peter to pay Paul over here. So I think most companies, good companies, say we want our suppliers to survive. We want them to thrive, right?
Yeah, they want them to thrive because it means more employees focused on more eyes and faster order fulfillment and all those things. But fulfillment centers don't have that luxury. They just don't have the cash. And unless they've been around for a long period, 5+ years, 6+ years, a bank is not going to open their coffers. And so they stay fledgling and they stay small.
Yeah, and there's another piece to this, which is the cost of, let's just say UPS charges you $10. You could say to your brand, this was a $10 shipment. But you also handled it. There was some effort made. You have somebody who's focused on shipping, and you're like, you added value, and you can, through your system, add a markup on that UPS or FedEx or regional carrier.
Yeah, and that's pretty common. Fulfillment centers of today have to make money on shipping. That is something that brands need to understand. There is not enough money in handling and storage for fulfillment centers to maintain profit. Even with the money we make on shipping, we're 7% net profit company. We're not swimming in cash over here to the point where, oh yeah, it's no big deal, we'll float everything. It's a very marginal business. And so there has to be this mechanism that allows 3PLs to mark up rates, but then also allows 3PLs to ensure that those rates that they've marked up are accurate, right? And auditing is another big element of the system that we ran into, where we saw, hey, I send a package out and I tell USPS this package weighs 1 pound, and USPS says, okay, it's $5. There you go, you paid your $5. I turn around, I tell my customer, yep, it's $5 plus my markup, so it's $5.50, right? Well, USPS, they take that package, they weigh it, they measure it, and they come back and say, oh, you know what, Braden? It's actually 1.2 pounds, and the new cost is now $5.60. Well, I'm underwater 10 cents, even after I've marked it up and sold it to my brand. That happened to us again on another year, and we lost $250,000 just in markups that we, or excuse me, in adjustments
Ooh,
that we didn't catch. Yeah.
ooh.
So these are some of the financial problems. You got a cash flow problem, you have a margin problem, and these are huge deals. And
And if I could interject for just a second, the cash flow thing, I worked for my first job at 19 years old. I worked for my dad. He owned an engineering business, and I remember we had engineers that worked with us and designers. And I remember we worked with the automotive companies and huge companies. They could pay us, out of petty cash. That there was nothing but what we were asking for. But we would consistently find ourselves not getting paid in 30 days, and our payroll was huge and our margins wasn't super high. And I just remember, and then when they came up with the CAD systems, we're like, we're never getting paid on time now. Like, explain to me. And I remember it was such a struggle. And then years later, I was flipping through a magazine and I read about Michael Dell and Dell Computer, which is kind of a famous cash flow story. Dell Computer grew like a weed for like 15 years. And Braden goes on, buys a computer for $1,000. Dell Computer says all their suppliers on net 30, net 15, they funded their growth through their own money. And that is such a dream come true for a
wow,
business
that's the
owner.
ideal situation. Sure.
And you're not doing that 100% for these companies, but you're giving them a big boost.
Correct. I'm right. We're trying to level the market, right? We're trying to right size the way that cash moves in the logistics sphere because it's a problem. It's a problem that's putting thousands of 3PLs a year out of business, right? And this lack of visibility, this lack of knowledge of how much money they're actually making is a rampant issue. And so this fintech has to be focused on 3PLs. There are problems that 3PLs face that other industries don't face. And so RocketFuel is very specific, and we're going to build every financial tool we can possibly build. If there's an issue in the market and we can solve it, we're going to build it and we're going to put it in RocketFuel. Because at the end of the day, we're fintech for fulfillment.
Yep. So you started with solving one problem, which was a little bit of the cash flow problem with shipping. So if I'm working with Rocket Fuel, I basically have a meter that I've got for my customer, very similar to what you have with UPS, FedEx, or one of the big regionals. And in addition to the cash flow, you're letting them mark it up.
Correct. And audit it post markup.
Yeah, and the auditing is just as big because that sometimes the difference, if the auditing is hard because FedEx and UPS don't make it easy to do auditing. Please explain.
Yeah. So when we got into the auditing side of things, we found that some carriers are very transparent. I say very transparent loosely, right? But USPS actually allows us to access their API and pull what those adjustments are so that they can be audited in real time. Well, FedEx and UPS, they don't allow that, right? And you can tell that there's probably a exactly, you can tell there's probably a purpose behind that. So what we did is we said, okay, well, you give us invoices every week, and those invoices are pretty much the same. So we already have the data flowing in from their WMS system. So all a 3PL needs to do is take their UPS invoice, drop it into our system, and it will actually match it up against what they had pulled from their WMS. So we've basically gotten around the lack of API by building out this invoice mechanism.
Yeah, and that's super important. So when we talk about auditing, just to make it real simple, is it's the difference between what I was quoted and what I was invoiced. So if I was quoted $8, I don't want to find out that it's $9 a, a week later.
And I only charge my customer $8.80. Yep, and now I'm 20 cents under.
There's another piece of auditing, and I'm wondering if you guys get into this at all, which is it was, there's a dozens and dozens of different service levels at UPS FedEx. So if it's supposed to be there by 10 a.m. and it didn't get there till afternoon, can you capture that for me?
Yes, so we actually capture all the late shipments.
Ooh, I
So
like
we'll
it.
recognize, yeah, we'll recognize, hey, that these are all outside of standard. These are all outside of format. There's a company out there called Shipware that does this on a very granular level and actually files the claims for you. So that's not been the biggest focus of our system, but that's something that will be integrated in the future, where we'll actually catch the late shipment and then work with you to file the claim back to UPS to say, hey, you told me 2 day, it got there in 3, so I need a reimbursement on that 2 day shipment.
I remember years ago doing somebody was doing auditing for us, somebody in house, and this is when I was at a 3PL, and we found a little bit of money that the carrier owed us, and they said, "Okay, we see all this. Rather than give you this, how about we just cut what we charge you 1%?" And because they didn't want to get into that business of that back and forth. And so we basically said, I think it was basically the 1% less covered all of the issues. And we were happy with that because, okay, there was going to be some issues here and there, but we didn't have to chase it. But I think good business kind of dictates that you understand when you're paying for something that you're not getting, whether it's not being there on time or, you know, paying more than you should have for another service.
Well, and billing in fulfillment is a moving target. You know, in manufacturing, it's pretty simple. I go to 5 manufacturers. I ask for a bottle. I give them the specs. They're going to give me a price. Right? Simple as that. This is $2 a bottle, $1.80 a bottle, and you can compare side by side by side. Right? In fulfillment, there's 40,000 plus 3PLs, I think, in the North American continent, and all 40,000 have a different flair of some kind on, oh, I charge this much for this, I charge this much for that, I charge a wrap fee, oh, I don't charge a wrap fee, I charge a pallet out fee, oh, I don't charge that, I charge this, I'm cubic foot on storage, well, I'm per pallet on storage, I'm you know there's not a symbiosis, and it makes billing very difficult. It also makes it difficult for the brands because they're sitting like, what are my costs? I can take a $2 bottle, multiply it by 100,000. I know I'm going to spend 200,000, but what am I going to spend with you guys, right? And so really figuring out ways to right size that and give brands clarity of what they're buying, how much it costs per order, what it affects their bottom line. Those all seem like very simple concepts that just don't exist effectively, right? And WMSs, I think they're working very hard to build incredible operational tools and incredible, they're constantly flowing through this omni-channel world of I've got to integrate with Shopify. Well, now I need to integrate with this element of Shopify. Well, now I got to deal with TikTok. Well, now I got to deal with this. And it's difficult for them to then double down and create a great billing system. And so that's where we see the holes in the market. And that's where we look at that and say, I think we can make this better and really hit what fulfillment centers need.
So you can get them the metering, the auditing, the claims and disputes, updates on that, and super important. And if I could throw some of this more general about the industry, during COVID, we saw this huge boom in e-commerce, and we all knew, so when e-commerce boomed, obviously fulfillment boomed. I think we all expected that e-commerce was going to continue to grow. Obviously, some brands struggled at coming out of COVID because we all went back to restaurants and shopping at stores. And what I've heard from a number of fulfillment companies is, yeah, in the beginning, we took anybody. We worked with all sorts of small brands. And you never hear somebody who's been in business for 5 years say, yeah, we work with really small brands. and a number of companies, fulfillment companies, were started by people who were doing fulfillment out of their house and couldn't find somebody. And so they said, I'm going to start my own fulfillment company. As the industry realized, some of these smaller players are too difficult to work with. Maybe they don't have the volume. And so you're taking up my shelf space, and I'm not really charging you for that. I'm charging you for pick, pack, and ship. And so suddenly we saw a whole bunch of fulfillment companies, I'll say, maybe just grow up. And they just matured in a way where they said, here's where we're making our money. We make money on these 3 big brands, and these other 16 are slowly killing us.
And, we had to go through that exact same transformation. I mean, I'm a sales guy by trade, right? I love sales. I love talking to people. I love the relationship element of sales. And when we were building launch fulfillment, I wanted to build it fast.
You wanted to say yes to everything.
Oh yeah, yeah. I remember one. It was 2020, end of 2021. I closed 18 clients in October and 22 clients, or excuse me, 18 clients in September and 22 clients in October, and that was a nightmare, right? An absolute nightmare, because exactly what you said, fulfillment centers, shelf capacity is one thing. You can always figure out more shelving. You can figure out more material handling. Yes, that's a complete inhibitor, and these small clients pull away from your ability to have storage for large clients, right, or clients with larger volume.
Or new business.
Yeah, or new business. I think the more important thing though is that they suck away the mental energy of what your fulfillment center is able to accomplish. Right? If I've got a client who's got one order with a problem, I have to divert my team on the floor to go solve that one order. Well, by doing that, in the time frame it took them to go maybe solve that one order, I took away that team member from being able to fulfill, I don't know, 50 orders for one of our other large brands, right? And then on a customer service side, hey, we're trying to help this brand here, but they're chirping every day. Every day I hear from them, and they're doing 1/100th the volume of our biggest client.
I remember experiencing just this. I worked a little 3PL. We did mostly less than truckload, and we had two customers that were big, maybe 40% each of our business. And then we had a whole bunch of small guys. And there was some people who wanted to call in for quotes. And when I got there, I said, I don't want quotes. I want to work with people who work with us on every shipment. And they tended to be the smallest of the small. And so I said, all right, you can continue to do this, but I want you to slowly ratchet up the price. If we're going to work with them at all, we're going to make lots of money on them, or a decent amount of money. I'm not going to be their lowest. They're making 5 phone calls to us to get so we can make $80. And we slowly got rid of that business because it would drive me crazy. I have an emergency with one of my big customers who make up 40% of our revenue, and they're talking to somebody who's wants to get $10 more off.
Yeah, and that they're doing one shipment a month, right? So your $80 just went down to 70. And the reality is, they're going to be, sadly just as loud, just as frustrated. And why aren't you getting back to me, Joe?
Yep. And this what you're talking about, fintech for fulfillment, this is another part of growing up, which is starting to understand your cost, being paid for shipping, being able to perform the audits, but just as important as performing the audits, be able to also update your customer on what's going on with the audits, because you're doing that on their behalf. You're saving them some money, and that's a selling point. Is like we'll do the auditing for you.
Well, it's less communication with your customers, which improves your customer service capability to reach out on other things, be proactive instead of reactive, right? We're a visibility tool, very much so.
Yep. And so then you guys are launching, or have already launched this total billing package for.
Yep. This is going to be the keystone of our entire system. Absolutely. It's going to be. We started with shipping because shipping is, for us, it's 74.6% of our revenue, right? So it's a huge, huge chunk of every 3PL's revenue. We went from shipping to auditing because it's instant pain, right? So we address the instant pain first. And now the next phase of everything is that we get into a full billing platform. So this is actually in full development. We're hoping to launch it within the next, hopefully about month or month and a half here. But basically, your clients now, if you're a 3PL, all of your billing information is going to transition from your WMS into RocketFuel. We are then going to organize the information the way you want it, with multiple different billing layers that are very customizable. So it helps you, some 3PLs bill on the rate chart. And they say, oh, I have different margins as the rate chart goes up or down. Well, we built those tools, right? Some 3PLs are a flat rate. Some 3PLs only make a certain amount of money per shipment, right? Again, it's a moving target with how people like to do it. But the benefit here is that once you set up your billing profile, your brands will be able to log in, and right there in front of them, they'll have the invoice for the week or the month. And within that invoice, they'll be able to see every shipment and the breakdown of what that cost was, right? How much did the storage cost me on this shipment? Well, it was 7 cents. Okay. So I can break down all of my overall costs so that brands don't feel like, oh, the moving target of pricing is now my moving target.
But this is again, this part of growing up. I do think that we had this tremendous opportunity with COVID, and there's a lot of companies that launched and a lot of companies that are continuing to grow like yours and expand. But I think it's also the expectations from the shippers is going to continue to grow. And I think it's the the brands that are going to do well are going to say, these guys are our partner. They're our fulfillment partner, and not not just a vendor, right? Because you can and should provide information that tells them how to run their business. You say, hey, fellas, there's some SKUs that aren't moving and we don't want them on our shelves anymore. And it's for your own good also. Can we get from 15 SKUs to 10 and save you some money and save us some hassle?
Yeah, I had a client recently who said, "Hey, can you guys evaluate our Amazon and tell me if fulfilling with you is going to be cheaper than fulfilling with Amazon?" Right. Well, I looked over all of his numbers and I said, "Look, Amazon's very competitive, right? Overall, I think it's going to be more beneficial that you stay with Amazon." I said, "But my advice for you is they're charging $145 a pallet between the months of this October and January." And then they're charging, almost $50 a pallet for the rest of the year, right? So I said, tighten up your pallets. If we need to do more FBA prep here, let's evaluate what the cost of that looks like versus the cost of storage at Amazon, right? That's what a fulfillment center needs to do with their brands. It needs to be partnership driven. It needs to be, we're the warehouse. And so if I'm your operations manager who's running your warehouse, I'm going to give you advice on your brand, right? We have to have a bit of ownership in every brand that's in this building, which is why it's dangerous to take thousands of customers. It's
Yeah, it's also to be that consultant. You have to have this. And keep getting back to, you have to have the numbers, and this is why you need fintech for fulfillment. Let's switch gears for a second. So the way you've learned all these lessons about fintech is because of launch fulfillment, your own 3PL, and you're eating your own cooking over there. So you are um, you're using the tools that you're creating at RocketFuel at launch fulfillment. So tell me about launch fulfillment. What do you guys? What's your secret sauce over there?
yeah, no. Uh, People ask me what our secret sauce is, and I could say, oh, it's because we own a logistics company and we handle all of our logistics in house. It's because we have, multiple fulfillment centers across the world. It's because we have XYZ. But at the end of the day, you can find plenty of dogs that have that and are even better at it. Uh, the fulfillment world is very full of people who are uh, really halfway in it, right? And they kind of act like a B or a C player in terms of what they need to be doing. And brands are feeling that. You hear so many brands online that say fulfillment sucks, it's terrible. I've been to so many and they're all awful and they're all horrible, right? So what's the hole in the market? It's quality. It's quality and great service. I would say about 2 years ago, we went through a transformation internally. We hired a new VP of operations, and she came in and she made us phenomenal, right? To the point where I don't take credit for that myself. She was fantastic and is fantastic. And that allowed us to go to clients and say, look, we are a premium fulfillment center. We don't work with everybody. We work with clients that we're going to double down on, that we're going to be partners with. And that's going to be our competitive advantage, right? And when that happened, we saw our profitability increase by over 400% within that period of time. We fired about 60 clients. So again,
So that's that evolution that you were talking about earlier.
yeah, and that was hard, right? We cared about our reputation, so we had to make sure they had a landing spot. We didn't want to hurt their brands.
No, no, that's never the issue. It's just I think there was a ton of companies that grew saying we can be a fulfillment company. And by the way, it's just a difficult. Not e-commerce isn't easy for everybody.
No one is adapting.
Yeah, and I've talked to a lot of people who will call me and say no one will work with me because we're too small. And I said, "Well, Do it out of your garage until you're big enough, because I understand why they don't want to work with you. You're small, and you're probably not. They're not going to make much money on you, and you're a drain.
And you're
That's
gonna,
not.
yeah,
I don't. I'm
it's
sure you're a
unfortunate.
great person. You're just that your business is draining launch fulfillment today.
But you think of it like a bank would think about it, right? A bank has limited funds. They have to protect those funds, and they have to make sure that those funds are allocated correctly. And a fulfillment center has to do the same.
So somebody came on my podcast a while back, and they said, "No, Joe, we actually are very happy to have all these small players work with us." And then I saw them. We had lunch, and and he said, "You were right. Those small guys they are not right for us." And but anyway, getting back to it, this is the industry growing up now that the fulfillment is making it to prime time. They need their own. They need to have some best practices. One is going to probably be, who do you work with, and then as we talked about, they also need some financial tools to help them understand their business and serve their customers better.
Well, and another big reason for that is the marginalization of the entire fulfillment sphere, right? We talk to a lot of brands in RocketFuel, or excuse me, we talk to a lot of fulfillment centers in RocketFuel, and some of them are old dogs. They've been around for 20 years or so, and they'll say, we need a product like this because when we first got into the game, we could make 35-40% on shipping, and it was great profit. We could charge a higher margin on handling. We tended to only have brands that had finally gotten to the point where they should be in a fulfillment center, and we were making way more money. But Shopify has come out with rates that are readily available. USPS has removed a lot of its reseller type agreements. It's really compressed the access for 3PLs to have anything different than what a brand can get. So you can't sell on that.
So when you talk about 3PLs, how are they making their money? You said it earlier that they make most of their money from shipping. Is that small parcel shipping, or is that shipping in and out of their facility by truck?
Yeah, it depends on the 3PL. A lot of 3PLs choose one or the other. There are a chunk of 3PLs like ourselves that do that make money on both sides of the parcel and the freight shipping. Um, but if you look at what the 3PLs are getting now, you're lucky to get 10 to 20% on shipping. That's a realistic margin.
That is on the small parcel shipping?
Small parcel, yep. And even pallet shipping, 10 to 20% is a realistic number because there's so much competition. And so there's a natural reduction of margin. And that's caused 3PLs to have to get extremely tight, and not just tight on their auditing, but also tight on their cash. Hey, I don't have as much money.
While we were prepping for this conversation, you talked to me a lot about operational excellence, and you said it's kind of just necessary to stay in this business. And I think that's there. This is the evolution. When e-commerce blew up during COVID, especially, they were just happy to have someone who would help them out. And
Yeah,
then over
get
the
the
last
majority of
5 years,
packages out the door. Yep,
they said, "Yeah, we hired you originally, and because you were said yes, but now we need to make sure you're the right partner."
exactly. And that's the evolution. Like you said, it's brands of today are not willing to be as patient with a fulfillment center that's not willing to hold a accuracy rating above 99.99. That's the reality.
So let's just say right now I was one of your customers. If I get orders, let's just say for, I always use the example of sweaters. So the sweaters are on your shelves, and that order comes in. What time is your cutoff time for shipping that sweater today?
Yeah. So everything that comes in from noon the day prior to noon the day of gets shipped out that day. So we have a noon to noon cutoff. In the UK, that cutoff's even further up, right? Because a lot of the UK is 100% next day shipping. So a lot of the UK customers, I ordered it today, I better see it tomorrow, right? So we have to mend our standards to really match what the market is. But running a fulfillment center is like driving a car and changing the wheels and changing the engine and changing all the parts you need to while the car's going 80. It never slows down, and your customers will never allow it to slow down. You need to keep up.
I have a friend who owns a restaurant, and a top restaurant, and they did really, really well. And said every night is like doing a production of Cats.
Yeah. Imagine that. Yeah.
It's exacting and crazy, except and you go, oh my God, this was a once in a lifetime. Well, let's do it again tomorrow.
Yep. Yep. We'll see you again tomorrow. And hey, if we miss a day, then we got some catch up to do. And so yeah, it is running a 3PL is running business on hard mode. I believe that fully. It's a very difficult industry, from operations to finance to customer service. It's very difficult, and we're just trying to make it that much easier.
Yep. So we have one other company we need to talk about, which is Launchpath, and that is a truck brokerage.
Yeah. So basically, we the first money we ever made in launch fulfillment was on freight. So I even have a picture of me and my business partners standing over a pallet, and that was our first ever revenue. So we knew freight was always going to be an integral part of the business. Also, if you're a brand, you're going to be selling not only online, but you're also going to be selling to Walmart, Target, Costco, whoever, right? And so, is it ideal, and does it offer a premium touch if we're telling that brand, hey, yeah, we don't deal with any of that. Go ahead and work with these other guys, right? Uh, Additionally, there's revenue lost in that. Now, you have to be very good at logistics. Again, don't do anything unless you can be great at it. And our whole thing in that was, we want to make sure that we can provide in-house freight for our clients where all of their needs are taken care of. And, they can basically do everything from my customers' orders are going to their house to my customers' orders are going to Costco or going to KeHE or CST Diamond or UNFI or any of the major distributors, but it's going there under the right routing guides with the right carriers at the right price. And that's what Launchpath offers. We don't sell to brands outside of launch fulfillment.
Yeah, I think it's very difficult for the brands and for the fulfillment companies. Retail logistics was hard enough, where you say, send us an LTL or a truckload of goods and we will sell that. And then when we start running low, you send some more. Because now, as you mentioned, I might be selling on Amazon.com, Walmart.com, maybe some other websites. You're selling on your own website. And then you might also say, yeah, we also are selling through Nordstrom's or through, and you have to have the right inventory for every one of those. So I can't say, yeah, I took all of my stuff and gave it to Walmart, and then I got some Amazon orders and now I can't fulfill them. You won't be on Amazon for very long if you don't fulfill, because I believe they have very exacting standards. You fall off of the map. You're on page 7 if you can't deliver to their
Oh yeah,
standards.
or you're not on page anything. Yeah, you're shut down. And that's the danger, right? That's where fulfillment used to be. Okay, I got an order, I can take 2, 3, 4, 5 days to fulfill it. It'll take 5, 10 days to get to the customer's house. And you know what, hey, I'm ordering books on Amazon on my dial-up computer, right? And I get that little noise every time I pick up the phone. Those days are long gone. The world is speed. People will order it on TikTok, they'll order it on Amazon, and then they say, where the heck is my package, right? There's a comedian that says, I just ordered it, why isn't it in my hand?
Yeah, yeah,
um,
exactly.
but that's the new world, and if
Yeah,
you can't keep up with those standards from a technology standpoint, an operational standpoint, a speed of communication standpoint, and a price standpoint, you'll go out of business. It is that simple.
what are you seeing on the same day, next day? Is same day important for a lot of customers, or is next day still the boss?
Yeah, you still get plenty of customers that are doing extremely well on Shopify, just with your standard. Hey, you ordered it today; it's going to be fulfilled by either today or tomorrow, and you're going to get it within 2 to 4 days after that. That's still an acceptable level, I think, within today's world. However, and this is where I say it's an adapt or die industry, I thoroughly believe that guys like Amazon and guys like even ShipBob, who's trying to put a fulfillment center in every state, they're going to have a competitive advantage. And every fulfillment center out there needs to learn to adapt with that, with the right kind of carriers, with the right warehouse locations. Because, like I said, these days of just a single location mom and pop fulfillment center, I think, are coming to an end. And you're now getting to the point where you need to be multi-location, omni-channel, high technology, high operational excellence, or brands are just going to look elsewhere. The options are out there. Why stick with these guys when I can save money and get a faster service with one of 1,000 other companies, right? So I do think when drones come into the market, that's something fulfillment center is going to have to adapt to, right? If that's a legitimate thing. um, Robotics, the way that the information is presented. I mean, there has to be a focus on the future of the technology here, or like I said, 3PLs will go out of business. It's as simple as that.
I had somebody say this on my podcast a year or so ago. They said they were talking about micro fulfillment centers. So these would be in the city, so have a DC right in a city or a fulfillment center right in the city. And they said uh, finding locations was difficult at that time. They said, but the guy said, I think people are missing the point here. Can you find anyone to run that? And so he says it's one of those things where people go, I want an experienced warehouse manager who understands the technology, blah, blah, blah. And he said, and I want 10 years experience. Well, good luck. Good
Yeah,
luck.
he's working for ShipBob.
Yeah. There's just, and I think we increasingly expect hybrid people who are capable of understanding the warehouse business as it was 5-7 years ago, but also saying we are going to update it with tech. And the only way we'll be able to stay in the biz.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, I'm going to summarize what we talked about. Then I'll get your final thoughts on the topic. So I'm talking to my friend Braden DiCristofano, and we're talking about RocketFuel, Fintech for fulfillment. So RocketFuel started as a metering company, so helping 3PLs meter, just like they get metered from
USPS. Yep.
UPS or FedEx, and it's allowing them to really improve their cash flow. That's why they call it RocketFuel. It's a business where cash flow is at a premium. All businesses like that. And then it started with metering, but then it continued on with auditing, very important in this biz, and then with claims and disputes, and then the ability to update your customers on where those claims and disputes were. And soon, you guys are going to add a billing system. So this is going to be kind of from soup to nuts on all the fintech you need as a 3PL. And the good part about what you guys are developing is you're eating your own cooking. You are using these tools at launch fulfillment. Now there's other people using them now, but you test them all out. you know where all the problems are because you're using it well before you let anyone else use it.
Yep, exactly.
So it's helping launch fulfillment be uh, a company that's run with operational excellence before you bring it out to the market. And I think that's a cool thing. Last but not least, we talked about your company launch path and what you guys are doing there, which is the transportation. And you guys, you're only working with launch fulfillment on, that's the only customer?
Correct. Yep. We tried to branch it out into the market. We grew it very fast. And then we decided this is not the best way to make money on this. So, nor give operational excellence. And that was the most important part. And so pulling it in-house was the best decision we made.
So put a big old bow on this one, Braden. Final thoughts on the topic.
Yeah, I think the key here is we understand that we're creating RocketFuel as for our competition, right? Ultimately, I don't care. I don't care that we're helping the 3PL industry get better. In fact, it excites me. It excites me to think, okay, if we can create a product that changes the way billing is done, even if RocketFuel isn't the billion-dollar mega conglomerate, right? Obviously, that's always our hopes and dreams. At the end of the day, if we've dropped enough of a drop into the market that the ripple effect changes it, we've been highly successful, in my opinion. We want to see other 3PLs succeed. Our mission statement at RocketFuel is helping 3PLs make money, and that's our focus. And it's not make money for greed; it's make money for survival. At the end of the day, with the world adapting the way it is a system where 3PLs need better tools to survive, and that's what we're providing. And that gives me a great mission because I know the pain that 3PLs feel. I know
yes, you do.
the sitting awake at night wondering how I'm going to make payroll because I've got this great problem that I'm growing too fast, right? And we don't want that problem to exist for the world, because e-commerce is not going away. It's only going to get bigger. Warehouses are never going to go away. Office spaces may go away or may downsize, but that just means more warehouses are going to get built. And so our focus is the future. Our focus is keeping 3PLs in business and helping them grow and helping them achieve operational excellence, because they now have the cash to do so. And so that's my bow on it, I'd say.
Yep. So if somebody wants to work with RocketFuel, what does that look like? I'll put a link to all your information so people can reach out. But if they reach out to you and say, yes, I want to do this, what's implementation look like?
Yeah, pretty simple. We send over a quick link. You sign a one-page document, and from there we can get your account set up. If we're already integrated with your WMS, then it's an overnight thing almost. And then we work with if you want to do the metering, we get set up with the merchant processor, and then you're going. I mean, it's we want to get you set up in a week or less if we can. And from there, our team actually goes in and helps you get the brands onto RocketFuel, right? The next step after signing up is getting your brands to sign up into the system and starting to use the metering and starting to get used to that habit.
And you can help them with that messaging on that too.
Yep, we've actually built the full messaging package based on what we used in launch fulfillment. We built all the best practices and SOPs and all those guidelines, and we give that to our clients. And so it's a very highly effective process. We hold hands the entire way, and it works. It works.
Switching to launch fulfillment, if somebody's listening and says, hey, I want to work with these guys, I have a brand, what kind of companies are you looking for? Who's the sweet spot for you guys?
Yeah, so launch fulfillment, thankfully, just out of maturity and growth, we service brands that are about $500,000 a year in spend on fulfillment or more. And we also look for brands that are, I'd say, relatively more established, 5+ years. We look for companies that want partners and not vendors. If you're looking for a vendor, you're looking at the wrong company. We very much are vetted. So we probably vet 90 to 95% of the leads that come in the door, and only take that 5 to 10% that we want. But from there, we go all in, right? Our philosophy there is partnership. We have a customer doing a whole new customization piece, and another customer that's doing a whole new customization piece, and all that we've agreed to do because we understand they don't have any other options. And if we're their partner, we got to make it happen.
Yep. I always think of this as you aren't dating, you aren't engaged, you're getting married. So take some time and find the right partner.
Yeah, there's plenty of fish in the sea. Find the right fish. So
anyway, thank you so much for taking the time, Braden. What I'll do is I'll put a link to your LinkedIn profile, a link to your website, and any of the links you and your go-to-market team give me, I'll put those in the show notes so people can reach out and talk to you. And thank you so much for taking the time today.
Excellent. Thank you, Joe.
And thank all of you for listening to my podcast. Your support's very much appreciated. Until next time, onward and upward. You have been listening to the Logistics of Logistics podcast, where we engage with leaders in the logistics and supply chain community. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, hit the like button, and leave us a nice review on Apple or Spotify or wherever else you listen. Also, please check out our videos on YouTube and connect with us on LinkedIn. We're very big on LinkedIn. And you can also reach us on the logisticsoflogistics.com, our website.